Hey team, welcome back to another great episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader Podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today we're going a little bit different direction than y'all are used to at this point. We are going to be diving deep into the world of biologicals, regenerative agriculture. I've got my friend Brad Hobrock from AgriBio Systems out of Illinois on the podcast today. Brad, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad, I've been wanting to get you on here for several months with the conversation that's been going on in agriculture these days with the new administration coming in. We're going to go deep into that today. We're going to dive into some of your thoughts as a business owner in this space, as someone who has an opinion about what's going on in this space, and as a farmer, right? Because I know you guys have quite a few acres down there in Illinois as well. So you bring a lot of really cool relevance to the conversation from that side of it. Before we dive into it, though, everybody gets the same opening question. So, Brad, what does it mean for you to be intentional?
It's a great question. For me, to be intentional is to have a plan. It is to look, look at my day, the day before, even sometimes weeks before, and have that plan in place. And at the end of the day, then reflecting on what went right, what went wrong, what potentially, needs to be changed or adjusted. But then before I go to bed, then I look at, I do some gratitude things, and I look back, especially what went right, but then for the next day about what am I looking forward to the most? And, that could be one thing, could be two things, could be three things. From the business perspective, it's about maintaining a customer first perspective. When we set out to create AgriBio Systems back in late 2015, we did it with the goal that we would keep the customer first, and that is still something we do today because our customer success comes first. And certainly that's easier said than done, because there also has to be the mutual thought from the customer, the farmer side, rather than, Brad says do this, Adam says do this, Jared or some of our other guys say do this. There has to be really that mutual beneficial relationship and understanding there. Because just because we tell somebody to go do something based on our recommendation, the more that the customer understands the reasons and the whys behind that is ultimately what leads to that customer first success. And when our customers are successful, our success becomes much, much easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super, super well stated. And love you bringing that customer first. I think a lot of people talk about it, give it lip service, but I've been out to your guys' location, worked with your guys a little bit in the past, and I see what you do. And know what you're up to. And I see that happening firsthand. So well done. Great answer. Thanks for being on the show. I want to make sure we got plenty of time to dive into the juicy stuff that we got here today. Let's just start with this. Let's start with a little bit of a qualifying, conversation from your perspective, Brad. Give us you're somebody who's involved in the regenerative ag space. That's what AgriBio Systems assists with. Let's just say that, right? You've got a business partner in Adam York, at AgriBio Systems, who a great guy who I've met several times, done a little bit of work with. He's been through our coaching programs. So you guys have had a very successful business. You've grown a book of business in this space, and that's a big part of what you guys do. You got a growing team down there, which is fantastic. Just talk to me a little bit, man. How did you guys get into the regenerative space to begin with? You guys were conventional growers.
It's ironic, so we had a big customer meeting at our facility in Jacksonville here just back December 18th and 19th. And we had growers from 21 different states and 3 different countries as we're a part of this. And so Ray Archuleta and some of his team were also a part of it. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit more, maybe not. But the same question came up in the introduction of that meeting back in December. And it basically started on a bet because, as you just mentioned, we were 100% conventional based, and it was about, pouring nitrogen, pouring dry fertilizer, and a completely conventional mindset. And an acquaintance of ours kept coming to us, and he wanted us to try a biological product. And finally, he said, hey, just do some trials, give it a shot. If it doesn't work, we'll never come back. And so Adam and I were both, okay, here's the easy way to get rid of this guy, and we won't have to worry about him coming back. Well, and so the first trials we did were back in either 2011 or 12. No, it was 12 because it was the drought of 2012. And thankfully, the vast majority of those that we did were actually under irrigation, and so it wasn't a train wreck. But to make a long story short, every one of those in 2012 paid very, very well. So at that point in time, it was a tremendous eye-opener of what we thought was complete snake oil and bullshit. Gave us some results that we weren't expecting. So we did more trials in 2013. In 2013, about 85% of them were very, very profitable. And so at that point in time, we knew, okay, there's something to this. And that's when Adam and I started doing a really, really deep dive and self-education into biologicals and what was truly going on behind it. But yeah, it's a great question, but essentially, yeah, it was based on a bet. And the bet was, if it doesn't work, I'll never bother you again. And here we are.
That's wild, man. That's wild. So we got a salesperson that just won't leave us alone, keeps coming back, and finally like, all right, we'll try your stuff if you leave us alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
So then you put it on, can you share what that was? What did you guys start off with? What did he start you with?
Originally it was with Concept Ag, which is based out of Boot Hill, Missouri. I believe they've rebranded, and I think the name is Concept Agritech today, which our business and trays is it's similar, but it's still a lot different today. But that was the start of us getting involved into biologicals.
That's wild. That is wild. What was the big breakthrough? I mean, when I think about somebody having a discovery moment and really changing their mind, was it yield? Was it what did you see something in the ground? Like what were you testing? What were you measuring? What were you looking at?
The first things that we saw initially was the increased root mass and below ground growth and development. Some of them we also saw some above ground differences in terms of growth. Then, of course, that first harvest with those trials, there was a positive yield response and ultimately a positive return on the investment in those 11 or 12 trials that we did first thing there in 2012. And so, and this is something that we need to do a better job of in terms of trials, but we generally treat trials much differently than most people in this industry. And so rather than, okay, we're going to try something new in furrow or foliar or whatever it might be, we do one thing, we come back and weigh, that trial at harvest to determine, did it make more bushels or not? And so growing crops is a marathon, right? It is a multi-month process through the year, and it's not a sprint. And so we do different things to also learn, that being tissue tests, sap tests, today more biological testing through the growing season, because again, growing crops is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And if we start something better that gives us the opportunity for more yield, more return on that investment, we also have to finish that. And there's a lot of things that are done in this business today that they don't really give a true snapshot of what's going on. And starter fertilizers is one of those things. Starter fertilizer is called starter for a reason. It is to get it off to a better start, but it is not called finisher. Maybe we'll get into some of that here today, but we have to keep those things in mind. And one of the other mistakes that I see farmers making is split planting hybrids and varieties. And it's the old, and this was created primarily from the seed industry, is let's put half the planter in one hybrid or variety and the other half in the other side. And at the end of the year, we'll see which one wins. Well, then we're going to make most of our seed decisions off of those. And if we're split planting hybrids and varieties to reduce risk, that's a great idea. From a lodging perspective, from just general risk management perspective. But when we're doing this to see which one's better, and then we're going to make our seed decisions off of that, we just set ourselves up for a probably 90+% chance or likelihood of severe disappointment, because one of those is likely going to be better than the other. But then as we look towards the next growing season, there's no guarantee that the performance is going to be the same as that given year. And so, we really need to look at plant growth from a scientific perspective. And it's not just NP and K. It's not just, well, we've done it this way for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and so we're going to keep doing it. We have to realize that for plant growth to occur, number one, there's 9 nutrients that actually drive the structural plant growth part of that. But there's actually more than 70 minerals that are needed for plant growth, and some of those are for the immunity of that plant. Some of it's for enzymatic production. Some of it's simply synergies. But we do need to do a better job of understanding the importance of these things. And then also oftentimes, a lot of our nutrient deficiencies are actually caused by excesses that we spent money on. And so, again, AgriBio Systems was created primarily as an education platform. And yes, we do have several products. But our success comes from our customers and prospects understanding why they're making decisions they're making, rather than somebody told me to do it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's noble, right? I think it's very noble to be able to be in a situation where you're out there to educate, right? We're teaching the market as opposed to just trying to slam something on because that's where the spiff is this month, right? Or that's the program, right? That pays us the most. And
absolutely,
that's a lot of how things get moved, right?
Absolutely. And one of my previous roles in agriculture prior to creating AgriBio Systems, we worked with some different ag retailers, and here again, this is not a knock, this is not disrespectful, but very commonly, we would get to November, December timeframe, and go in and discuss things with the salespeople and the agronomists, and you would hear, well, I need to sell $500,000 of product to make my trip, come wintertime, or 100,000 or 200,000, where that number was, and that's the wrong reasons to be selling things. And I'm completely for incentivizing people, but it needs to be done the right way. And in my opinion, and this is strictly just an opinion, but trips is not the way to do that. And it's one of the reasons that salespeople have, bad reputation in a lot of cases, because there's a lot of things that are sold that is simply based on, I've got a goal to meet, yada, yada, yada. And it's not about, Mr. Farmer, how is this going to improve the success of your farm?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So if you think incentives are wrong, or maybe not exactly the best way to motivate the behavior, what is? What is the moral compass that you think we should be following?
The moral compass is mutual successful agreements and mutual success between both parties. One of the books that I actually just started is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And one of the quotes in there, and I'm going to read it here because I don't want to mess it up. But one of his quotes is, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems." And man, that really hit home. That really, really hit home because, we talk about goals with our employees. We talk about goals with our customers. And certainly I do believe that we should have goals, but if we don't have the right systems in place to support those goals, we're not going to get there. We're just not going to get there. And that's where the mutual beneficial success between customer and, us at AgriBio Systems becomes very critical. And we're fortunate that, that our guys that are involved in sales and in the consulting side, they do buy into that. They do believe that the customer success is the most critical part to the success of AgriBio systems. And that makes things a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. Great, man. All right. Well, let's amplify the focus on mutual success and mutually beneficial success, because we're, as we record this, it's the 20th of January, 2025. Obviously this will live on. Somebody may listen to it in the future, but the bulk of our listeners will listen probably this week or next. And about an hour ago, as we record this, we swore in a new president. We've got a new cabinet. We've got a new Congress. We've got there's a lot of control by one particular party. There's the opportunity for a lot of change, and there's been a lot of message of change coming in. You and I talked a little bit off the mic about this, coming in. When we were growing up, I mean, we're about the same age, right? We're in the mid 40s. When we were growing up, the rallying cry of the agriculture industry was "Feed the world," right? Everybody's tagline: "Feeding the world." Right? American agriculture, feeding the world. We're still doing that to this day. We've not stopped doing that. I have said this a lot behind closed doors and just in private conversations with people, including you. And this is my first time really going public in saying this. It's interesting to me. I think we've sort of lost our way a little bit. And what I mean by that is it's really important, obviously, that we feed the world. We were concerned. There seemed to be a genuine concern back in the 90s when that first came out about whether or not we could meet the global demand for food. I've had other people on the show. We've talked about this. We talk about population decline now coming into play. So we've been ramping up for this 9 billion number. Now we might not even get there. And now we're talking about significant global population decline by the end of the century, right? Places like Japan and China who have fallen below the sustainable threshold because they're not producing enough. Used to have a one-child policy in China. Now they're like paying people to make babies, and so we have to watch that here in the U.S. Anyway, before that becomes a problem here. But before I go too far, down the rabbit hole with all that, I share all that for context, guys. I share, for those of you listening, I share all that for context. The challenge that I see that we have now is that we don't have that rally cry. Like, feeding the world, that's table stakes. Like, you've proven as an industry that you can do it. We have proven as an industry that we can do it. We have more food waste than we should be tolerating. Just in the United States, we're wasting 20 to 30% of the food that hits the perishable food that hits the store shelves. So we have that. So we know that we can produce enough food. We have a surplus of soybeans. We have a surplus of corn. Your current commodity prices reflect this. The input prices don't seem to be dropping too terribly much from what I'm hearing from a lot of my retail customers who are going through sales training, and they're frustrated because they're trying to get farmers to buy stuff, and not everybody wants to buy stuff because they're being discerning right now, because they used to do this with $6 and $7 corn, and now they're doing it with $4 and $4.50. Right? So the conversation has shifted. So the industry always cycles. That's not different. We've lived through different super cycles up and super cycles down. That continues. But I'm just making the point that the conversation about what gets put on, that's a big thing these days. So you have all of that. So just let me review those things, right? So we're about feeding the world. I'm claiming now, like, that's table stakes. We have to be able to do that. There is no other acceptable outcome, right? We have the lowest amount of poverty and the lowest amount of famine and starvation in human history as we sit here today. So we're doing a good job there. We're meeting the demand. There's a lot of other things going on that are creating a lot of volatility, in the market in some ways, or maybe not enough in others. A lot of different things going on. And now, on top of all this, you've got a new administration coming in, and let's just name it. You have RFK, who's out here, Robert Kennedy Jr., who to some in ag, I would imagine, is kind of a villain. To others, kind of a hero. Right. And just the other day, right before the Biden administration left office, they banned red dye number 3. I would imagine, based on the conversation, there's going to be a bunch more of that kind of stuff coming through. And if the general public doesn't know red dye number 3 from glyphosate, so if they start lumping that all in together, right, you can see a lot more volatility in what you're able to put on your fields and those kind of things coming through. So I'm hypothesizing and kind of throwing out a lot of the big scary monsters that are out there in the space for a lot of people right now, and just kind of setting you up to talk about this for a little bit, Brad. What I get, so with all that context, as a grower, as somebody who's in the regenerative space, what do you see as the opportunity? Where do we need to be educating? Just talk about this with us, because from a farmer's perspective, from somebody who's gone from conventional to regenerative, you've walked that journey. I think there are a lot of people that are really scared to do that. A lot of businesses that don't know how to lead people. I mean, there's a lot of questions. We've got a lot of stuff going on in DC that's obviously going to impact us. We haven't had a farm bill for a while. Now we're going to have a new farm bill, hopefully in 2025. We'll see. I would imagine that's going to have some pretty big impact on what goes down. We've got a lot of new things. So what should growers be thinking? What are you thinking? What are you chewing on with all this? I'll let you just run with it for a bit.
Number one, we have to make our decisions based on true facts, not opinions, not the portion of, well, it's science, and so we have to trust it, because as we had discussed, prior to turning the mic on too, there's as much bad science in this world as there is good science. There is no doubt. What's that, sir?
And paid for science.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, this issue with red dye, this is probably the tip of that iceberg. And here's where looking at facts becomes very critical. So a lot of the processed foods that you can buy here in the United States today, the same processed food, whether they say it's Fruit Loops or Skittles or whatever it is, doesn't have the same ingredients in foreign countries, because some of those foreign countries have banned those things. Now, from a human perspective, we should be asking the question why, and looking at the facts of why, rather than, well, so-and-so says it's fine, and so we're just going to keep going on like nothing's wrong. Or, the FDA approved it, and so it's got to be fine. There's a lot of things that have gone on in this country, in this world, in the last 50 plus years that is bought and paid for science. And the bigger your checkbook, you can convince people things that shouldn't have ever been done. And so, yes, this red dye thing is absolutely the tip of the iceberg. There's also, an argument today across this nation and even the world of, obesity. And why are we a fat society? Some people want to blame it solely on we are not near as active as what we once were. And yes, there is truth to that. But there's also people who are working out daily, and they're doing different things, and they're still struggling to lose weight. And so here's where the proof is in the pudding. Here's where we have to be looking at facts. And the majority of the things that we do in the farm arena, that we do also to ourselves as humans, can be fixed if we look at the truth behind it. Every single disease is caused by one or more nutrient deficiencies. Plant, human, any living organism, plain and simple, guys or folks, the root cause of that is one or more nutrient deficiencies. And so this could go way, way, way deeper probably than what we have time here for today. But whether you're for RFK, whether you're for some of these changes, or whether you're scared of it, keep an open mind. Keep an open mind and make sure that the research you're doing is the correct research. One of our guest speakers at our winter meeting here a few years back was Dr. Arden Anderson from the Kansas City, Missouri area. And, a question came up about research in terms of, food as medicine. But he ended that conversation with, yes, you should research, but make sure that you are researching the right book or right places. And that's where, Mark, that's where we fall into some major negative areas is, well, again, we've done it this way for, multiple years. Why should we change? Well, we're creating our own problems here. And that is one of the beauties of something that regenerative agriculture does have the opportunity to fix. And I mean, look at the amount of people on statin drugs and other medications today. I think I saw something last week that the average American is on like 12 prescription medications today. We can change that. We can fix that. But we have to go to the right people to do that.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of things that are obviously wrong. Okay. And we look at overall health. A real fact, or a true fact, as you put it, right, is over 60% of the population is type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem. That's not good. That has a lot of downstream, and now we're talking about, Alzheimer's kind of being type 3 diabetes. And so these things are linked together, and then they get worse over time. So
absolutely,
the research backs that up. We just have, this is the first, our kids' generation is the first generations that's expected to live less long as compared to the previous generation, right? So our life expectancy is dropping. What is it? I saw something recently that almost, like 25 to 30% of Americans have tried Ozempic. So now we're taking drugs that have unknown long-term side effects to lose weight, right? And so those are some things. So we frame all that up. So there's a very relevant conversation. I think there's no beating around the bush. America, North America, probably lump Mexico into that, are very unhealthy. Right?
Here again, the proof's in the pudding.
The question becomes like, okay, well, how much of that is that food? Do we blame? So now, what are some of the other, there's some very ugly conversations happening out here, right? Well, that we're blaming glyphosate because that's become a scapegoat for those who maybe don't know what it gets used for. So is that it? Right? Is it that one thing? Well, the science says that's not true, right? Like that one molecule. Obviously, and there's plenty of other things that are going into the ground and the plants, and that end up in the food, but maybe we can't prove that or whatever. So, what is your take? Who do you listen to, or from the people the research that you study, the people that you listen to? What are we saying? Is it this? Is it like my take? Is it's probably not one molecule? It's probably a host of molecules that are causing issues. In people's bodies, just like you mentioned, it's a host of nutrient deficiencies that are driving a lot of disease. It makes sense, doesn't it? It's so interesting to me. By the way, I'm going to let you answer this question in a second. But when we go out and do our Thriving Leader program, or we're doing some sales training, I'm working with some agronomy salespeople. We always put them through a workout first thing in the morning, and then on the backside of that, we have some discussions. And so the workout usually exposes the level of health in the room. If you pick up what I'm laying down, it's usually not great. Okay. So we have a conversation later on. One of the questions I asked, like, what are the two most important things to be able to grow plants? Like, what do we need?
Carbon and oxygen.
Basically, we need water, water, sunlight, there's like some basic things, right? And I'm like, what are the most important things to be able to grow a human?
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing, right? Well,
it's the same thing. Right? And there's, so there's also the belief that plants are the only things that actually photosynthesize. That is also not true. Humans do it to a different degree, but actually sunlight at certain times of the day is very, very beneficial to get in a human's eyes. That's, another topic for, maybe another discussion, but there's just so much of misinformation that has led us to where we are today.
Right. Yep. Okay. We could go on for a long, long time about this because I think you and I see eye to eye on a lot of this stuff. But what are some of the big, from a grower's perspective, from a farmer's perspective, I mean, what do people need to be thinking about as it pertains to what's coming down the pike? What are you excited about? What are you scared about? What gets the lion's share of your mind's time?
The biggest thing that I'm excited about is making positive changes for yields, for nutrient density, for profits of our growers. You know, one of Ray Archuleta's famous quotes or statements is, I want to sign the back of the check, not the front of the check. And that's something through better decision making as farmers and producers, we actually do stand a chance to do that more consistently. We do have the opportunity to improve the health of not just the people in this country, but the world. We have the opportunity to educate people that a lot of the diseases and illnesses and things that we have been fighting for many, many years that we are told by conventional doctors that, hey, once you get it, you're pretty much screwed, is actually not true. Some of my fears are that we will remain closed-minded. I started going and working with a holistic doctor here in Springfield, Illinois, a couple of years ago. And since Adam York and some of the other guys, some of my friends have gone to this Dr. McCaffrey. But there's a lot of people that you bring up Dr. McCaffrey and holistic health doctor, whatever, and their mind just immediately turns off. And, this dude's a quack. He's freaking crazy. But what he's been able to do and his success of working with people and not just addressing symptoms, but addressing root causes is absolutely amazing. And that's, again, this ties back to regenerative agriculture very, very closely because what we do eat has a tremendous impact on health, on longevity, on everything that we do. And, the whole glyphosate thing, if it is so safe, why don't people drink it? Legally, Monsanto, Bayer today, can say that it's gone in 24 hours. And that is true because the free portion of that glyphosate does basically dissipate in that time frame. But what most people don't know is glyphosate has 2 patents. One is a chelator, one is an antibiotic, and it was originally created as a demineralizing agent in old iron pipes to clean them out. And so, what do antibiotics do? They kill. What's the term chelate or chelator mean? It simply means to surround or protect. And so, if as the world, as people, if we actually knew how glyphosate actually killed non-tolerant plants, guarantee you we would have a much different view of the safety behind it now. And I agree with you. I'm not blaming all of this on glyphosate because there are a lot of other things in place that are contributing to our problems. But glyphosate, I'm sorry, folks, it's not the safest thing in the world. Now, do we tell people to absolutely not use it? No, we don't. But we do recommend that we only use it when we have to. But again, if we went down the deep dive of how it actually kills plants, it would open people's minds. And the fact that, some of the compound left behind from Roundup has been found after a single application, in some cases as long as 22 years after that one application. It is also proven to be very detrimental on beneficial soil biology. A lot of the plant diseases we are dealing with is partially a result of the continued use and abuse of glyphosate.
Mm-hmm. So what is the answer then?
Education. It is it's education. It's also holding people accountable that have proclaimed that whether it's glyphosate or other things.
Very well said. Very well said. And as you're talking there, I'm thinking ahead a little bit around what where this conversation gets to lead, and thinking about why I wanted to bring this conversation in. Historically, this podcast is about business leadership in agribusiness. What does it mean for you to be an intentional leader? And as we're going into 2025, and I was reflecting on, hey, what are some of the things this show gets to be about as we evolve, and I'm looking at what's going on in the market, what's going on in the world, what's going on politically, and so forth. And I'm like, I would be remiss. I don't think this podcast would be intentional anymore if we didn't start to address some of these things. And I want to hear people from different perspectives, opinions, and bring in and have and create a very intentional conversation, because I think it's worth doing. So those of you that are out there, if you have somebody you think I should be interviewing, just shoot me an email, mark@themomentumcompany.com. Send me an email and let me know. We'll get them on the show. But here's where I stand on this. And I started into it earlier. There are, number one, America's unhealthy. Number two, I believe that's largely due to our food intake and lifestyle choices. Okay. Most of those lifestyle choices have something to do with food. Even if it's sitting around watching Netflix or watching the games on the weekend, like there's usually a bag of chips or a casserole or something, right? Hot dish for my Minnesota people. Those of you know that I'm from there, but there's food involved, right? There's alcohol involved. There's lots of things that are involved that are contributing to the need to then get on some of these drugs and other stuff that you talked about. Some of the food that we eat these days, most of the food that we eat is just, it is nutrient deficient. That's a fact. We know that to be true. And so we're not getting a lot of the nutrients. And this is why people get sicker than they need to. My wife and I really focus in on this is a huge, this one of the things that we stand, one of the core values for our family is vitality. Okay. When we mean core value, what is it? That's what you stand for. So one of the things that we stand for is vitality in our household. So you know what? My kids don't like it, but guess what? There's no Oreos in here. There's no bags of chips in here. Like if you want to make a snack, guess what? You actually have to go to the kitchen and friggin' make it. So my point with all that, we don't have a TV, right? We don't have a TV, and we're not being a prude. Like, do we watch shows? Yes. But when we want to watch a movie, what do? We bring out the projector, we hook up the laptop to the projector, and we'll have a movie night. So instead of just vegging all the time, we make memories when we watch movies. There's something around it. So my point with saying all that is I care deeply about that. I care deeply about the next generation. I care deeply about the next generation of agriculturists and where we get to go. And right now, I feel like we're just a little bit lost. It's just right now, it just feels to me, Brad, and like being in the business coaching arena and coaching so many salespeople and leaders and executive people in the industry. Like I see a lot of lost people who are really stuck, just going from one cycle to the next cycle, from one market to the next market, from one season to the next season. And we're not really always sure why, other than, you know what? I love agriculture. And that's noble. And I want people who love the industry, who love the space, to be able to continue to work in the space. I want to continue to feed the world, but not just get food in people's mouths, but have it be amazing food. The ag industry right now, and I don't want to be this voice, but somebody needs to step up and be the voice. The agriculture industry needs that leader. The reason RFK has the stage that he has, and now we'll have, hold on. And the reason that we will continue to have the door open, to other influences from outside the ag industry that are dictating what we get to do, what we don't get to do, is this: nobody has stepped up and said what that's going to be, and we haven't answered all the hard questions, and that's been a challenge. So I'll leave it with that. I think we're having a couple of technical issues, so we're going to do more of these, Brad. We're going to have you on again for sure later on this year. I want to dive back into this topic and go deeper on it, and talk more about some of the facts and science. I want to know where you're getting some of the research and some of the things, but I'm going to leave it at that, man. Thanks for doing the interview. Thanks for being on. It's been cool to have the conversation with you, and we'll go deeper down the road.